Welcome to Studio 58A live here at the Jamaica Information Service, or discussion program coming to you live on Facebook. I'm your host, Anjui James Sawyers, and I want to thank everyone who is joining us online wherever you are around the world. We appreciate it very much. And as you watch, remember to send in your questions and comments so that we can put them to our guests. And like how we have you, do us a favor and share this video with a friend or 20 or more so that we can have a lively discussion. Now, in studio with us today, we have Dr. Lisa Myers-Morgan, and she is the Principal Research Director in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries. We also have a farmer with us today, Marvin Douglas, and he's a part of the Project Grow initiative, and we'll hear more about that later. And we also have with us Mrs. Stephanie Coy, Project Manager, Deno at Geddes Foundation. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
You are most welcome. So today we're going to be talking more about the opportunities that exist in relation to cassava cultivation and processing. But before we get into that, we're going to find out a bit more about the relationship between manufacturing and agriculture, and I'm going to ask Mrs. McCoy to tell us more about this relationship based on Red Stripe's experience.
Hi, thank you, Anjui. Well, the relationship between manufacturing and agriculture is a symbiotic one, and we at Red Stripe believe that we have successfully demonstrated how to create a viable value chain, and we are showing how you can build this value chain using locally produced raw material. And we have proven for companies that they have to make a commitment to sourcing locally and sustainably, and to execute that commitment in a way that creates opportunities for stakeholders along the value chain. And we're speaking of our farmers. There are a number of persons along the value chain. There are the input suppliers as well. And then there are even the small cook shops and the transport providers within the communities. So the value chain is a vast one, and we believe that once you are sourcing locally, then this will help to strengthen communities.
Okay, so Red Stripe has been executing an initiative that incorporates the combination of both industries, that's manufacturing and agriculture, through an initiative called Project Grow. Tell us a bit more about this initiative.
So Project Grow is Red Stripe's local raw material sourcing initiative, and it started in 2013. And what it seeks to do is to replace the high maltose corn syrup using cassava starch.
Okay. And where are you now in terms of your goal?
So we're aiming for 40% replacement by 2020, and currently we are at 15% in our beer. And we will be using the cassava starch in the production of our malt, beer, and stout beverages.
Okay. So tell us more about the persons who have been benefiting from the initiative.
Well, primarily our local farmers have been benefiting, and we have persons who are coming on board and it's their first time in agriculture. I had one person who referred to themselves as an investor because they had idle lands, and for them this was a perfect opportunity for them to get into agriculture because, one, there is a guaranteed contract in terms of providing your goods to market, and also there's the assistance that is provided for technical extension service, there is training, and so a number of persons have viewed it as an opportunity for them. So we have approximately 121 persons that are contracted as farmers, and that covers 1,300 acres.
Okay. So I understand as well that there are some young persons who are benefiting from this initiative.
Yes, that's one of our most exciting components as well on the side of the Denwan Geddes Foundation, the charitable arm of Red Stripe. So through the foundation and the IDB MIF project, we have trained approximately 300 young persons, and these are rural as well as inner city youths. And these young persons have gained employment on Red Stripe farms as well as on what we call our outgrower farms. Yes.
Okay. So Red Stripe has learned a lot on this journey through Project Grow. And as such, you've hosted a knowledge sharing forum and you're planning to host other forums as well. Tell us more about this forum that was recently held, this knowledge sharing forum.
Okay, as part of the IDB MIF project, sharing our lessons learned is a major component. And so we are within our second year of the execution of the project. And we felt that it was a good time to share, as you said, the lessons that we have learned. So under the project, we are executing research, field trials with the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, and that is primarily being done in partnership with the research division under the ministry. And we are also working with the JA Reach Project 2, and we are doing field trials looking at the best agronomic practices for different varieties and also looking at the microclimatic conditions where these cassava varieties are grown. Excuse me. And we are also about to start our intercropping trials. So we are looking at how to sustain cassava cultivation beyond the now, and looking at what are the varieties that will provide high yield, high starch, and also how best to grow it. Along with the research, as I said, there is also the training that we have done for our farmers, both in terms of the climate smart cultivation as well as what we call farming as a business. So what are the business techniques that you would utilize to manage your farm? And we are also partnering with Jamaica National Small Business with the provision of loans to farmers. And these loans have been, I'd say, tweaked. They've been tailored for cassava cultivation because cassava is a 9-month crop. And so it is very difficult for a farmer to access a loan and then to immediately have to start repayment. And so we had discussions with JN Small Business, and they were able to develop a loan product for us that would give the farmers a moratorium. So they would actually start paying back after they have harvested their cassava. And also we are partnering with the UA Physics Department because we are quite aware of the impact of climate change. And so their portion of the research will look at how is it that we are able to model one, cassava, so that if you want to know how it can be grown where you are and what are the inputs needed based on your conditions, then you won't actually have to go and do a trial by error where you'd have to plant. You can actually just use software and put the information in, and then you will be guided. And so, as I said, at this juncture, we thought it would be a good point to begin that discussion, sharing what we have learned so far, and then prepare ourselves for the continued discussions and sharing that will take place next year.
Okay, tell me a bit more about the opportunities that were highlighted at the forum.
Well, there are a number of opportunities that still exist. One, for additional farmers to come on board. Red Stripe is seeking to plant out 3,000 acres. And so we're not quite there as yet. So we're still looking for additional farmers. As it relates to assistance to the farmers as well, because one of the struggles that the farmers continue to lament is the accessibility of land preparation. And so we find that in a number of the parishes, you don't have enough equipment that can prepare the land as quickly, especially because the demand is so high now. So we find that that is an area where we need a number of persons still to be coming on board. Also, in terms of having available locally, right, where the farms are, is the whole matter of labor, which is why we're training the youths. So we're seeking to train 1,000 youths. And as I mentioned, we're at 300. So, we have 700 more to go. So we're seeking to assist in providing qualified labor. And so interested youths, we'd want them to get in touch with us so that we can organize the training. We'll be partnering with 4-H to deliver training, so persons can also contact their 4-H office and let them know of their interest so that we can make note of their names. We're also looking for additional credit financing institutions to come on board because there are a number of demands of the farmers. So you're talking about land preparation. Sometimes they may need short-term financing and not necessarily long-term financing. They may need to be able to purchase large-scale equipment because we want to, especially for the harvesting, become a little bit more mechanized because the harvesting is the largest labor-intensive component of the cassava crop cycle. And so we want to see how we can get some of our students to start to look at, how can they create machinery, whether to modify what exists or create something new that can actually assist in mechanizing the cassava crop.
Okay. So we're going to bring in Dr. Morgan at this juncture. At this point of our discussion, I want to find out more about the ministry's support and involvement in the Project Grow initiative in terms of the field trials and any other support that the ministry is providing.
Okay. Well, over the years, the Ministry of Agriculture, way back, had actually done several evaluations on cassava varieties, primarily because there were some issues with regards to the yields that farmers were obtaining, at least 20 years or so back. And we had several initiatives where we had introduced cassava varieties from SEAT, with the intent of introducing varieties which were high yielding and highly productive. From that, we had identified at least 2 varieties, which today, MCOL 22 and I think CM 849, which continue to be utilized by farmers. And however, as it relates to cassava, we cannot really depend solely on just 1 or 2 varieties. There is still need to do further evaluation and determining varieties which have yields or traits that are ideal. Now in the case of red stripe, where they require a variety that is high yielding in starch. So as a result, we had several varieties, about 11 or so, that were introduced around 2012, and these varieties were evaluated by the Research and Development Division, and we have selected at least 9 of them, from which we are doing further evaluations now under Project Grow to determine whether or not these varieties can actually, how they can perform under the various agroecological climates that exist in Jamaica. So there is a team of researchers which include, Dr. Reed, I'm just calling names. She's one of our senior directors, and she's leading this effort along with our officers in the crop research department. And we have on board 2 research assistants that are with Red Stripe, and these young ladies are from the University of the West Indies. They're still graduate students, and they are actively engaged in doing field trials, looking at evaluating these varieties in terms of their starch potential, in terms of increased yield, how do they stand up to pests and diseases which are here locally in Jamaica. They're also going to be evaluating these varieties within an intercropping system. Mrs. Coy made mention of that. And the whole objective is so that we can sustainably produce cassava. cassava is a very exhaustive crop in that it pulls a lot out of the soil. And as a result of that, it warrants us actually putting back what has been taken out. And as we go further in terms of ensuring that we have sustainable systems, we have to ensure that we have diversity in our cropping systems. So as a part of this effort, we're seeking to identify crops that can be planted with cassava, which will be crops that the farmers have a market for, and at the same time will have certain attributes or traits that will help to put back what is in that soil. So we're actually looking at timing in terms of when do we plant these intercrops at the same time as the cassava, prior to, or sometime later on after the cassava has been planted established, I should say. We are actually looking at the cost of production associated with this practice, because when you intercrop, you could actually have a case where the yields of cassava could actually either decrease or go up. So which combination or options are best suited for a particular area? So that is basically what we're doing. We're also ensuring, though, that there is proper characterization of these varieties that we have now, because over the years farmers may call a variety by a common name like bluebud or a rockwood or something like that, and sometimes it's difficult for them to distinguish between that unless you are familiar as a farmer with this particular variety. So we want to ensure that we do genetic characterization, phenotypic characterization, and we are partnering with CIAT as it relates to the genetic characterization to ensure that we know exactly what it is that we have established at the various locations, etc. So basically this is just the first step in this, because in the region, cassava production, the productivity of cassava, there is a big gap as it relates to our level of production, or I should say productivity, compared to, say, Asia, for example, which is much higher than ours. But Jamaica can say that our yields, our average yields, are higher than the world average or comparable to. But still, when we would compare to an industrial country like China, for example, where they plant a lot of cassava for industrial purposes, we still need to identify those varieties that perform similarly, because for Red Stripes agenda and for what they are seeking to do will require high cassava varieties which are high yielding in starch. So therefore we still have a way to go in terms of that. Cassava, in terms of pests and diseases, yes, it is said that it is a hardy crop, but there are certain diseases which, if we are not on top of, for example, there are diseases in Africa, for example, Cassava Mosaic virus disease, which is a very, I use the word dangerous disease, that we have to ensure that it is kept out of Jamaica. We have to ensure that varieties that we're using have some form of tolerance, because we know in our past and even present that even in our attempts to keep things out, sometimes they do get in. So we have to ensure we have that genetic diversity within our crop that can actually stand up to anything that may come, so that to mitigate that threat as it relates to this particular initiative or any other initiatives that would involve cassava.
Okay, you mentioned hardy crop.
Yeah.
Can you explain what that means?
All right. Cassava is one of those crops that can actually produce on marginal soils, meaning soils that don't have a lot of nutrients in it, or even under, drought conditions. It can actually be able to produce, but it may not produce at the level, the high yields that you would want compared to other crops that would not perform any at all. So that is why it's considered a hardy crop. So can you imagine now if a crop like that is established in an environment where it gets all the nutrients, it gets all the water that it needs, etc., how much more it can actually perform.
Okay, okay. So at this point, we're going to just move over to our online audience. I'm seeing Rohan Drisdale tuning in, and he is bigging up Farmer Dougie. And we also have Troll de Claude. Thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. And for those of you who are also tuning in, we do welcome your questions, your comments, any suggestions that you may have. So we're going to just jump right back in. And Dr. Morgan, you mentioned SIAT earlier, or SIAT rather. You mentioned SIAT earlier, and I'd love to find out more about that organization.
Well, it's a Colombian based organization that does a lot of research on root and tuber crops. And as it relates to cassava, they have done extensive work. I mentioned earlier with regards to Asia in terms of the high level of productivity, where in Asia you can get over 25 tons per hectare yields from cassava based on the level of involvement in research with that particular organization and the farmers in Asia. So they have been around for, as I said, for years and have contributed significantly to our knowledge with regards to the various root and tuber crops. They actually they also provide germplasm as well. So they actually act as a repository of germplasm material for root and tuber crops from all over the world. So if you're interested in a particular variety that has a particular trait, then through what we call a materials transfer agreement, you can actually liaise with SIAT to get that information. They do genetic characterization as well. They are an organization that their mandate is really to address the needs of farmers across the world.
Okay. So Red Stripe through Project Grow, they're involving a lot of farmers, and there's room for more farmers based on the goal that they have in terms of the production levels. And it is clear then that there's an opportunity that exists for more persons to get involved in cassava production. What then are some of the advantages of planting cassava?
Well, as I said earlier, in terms of it being a hardy crop, cassava is a very versatile crop. Cassava is not just for primary production as a source of food. There are many millions, especially in the tropical countries, that depend on cassava as a primary source of staple or carbohydrate. But it also has other nutritional qualities, such as minerals in particular. But the main purpose or benefit from utilizing cassava is the high starch or high energy that it provides. But when we move away from primary production, because if you look at Jamaica, we're not a major consumer of cassava, fresh cassava. And a number of us, in terms of our grandparents or so, would have fed those of us who grew up in the country or so would have had that experience. But now for Jamaica, we have to look at cassava in terms of being part of a value addition. In terms of what Red Stripe is doing, it has a potential for producing starch for various other products, pharmaceuticals, spray starches, for example, pastes. China, for example, they produce cassava primarily for industrial purposes, and that is where the value addition and increased earnings actually come from, right? So cassava is very, very versatile in that regard. One of the few crops that can actually cross over from just being for food, also for feed for animals in China. And even here, to some extent, the leaves of cassava are high in protein. And I recall even way back in the 60s, there's documentation where there was a recommendation that we consider incorporating cassava leaves in animal feed. The tubers have been researched in terms of providing an alternate source of carbohydrates in feeds for monogastrics like poultry and pigs. And it has been shown that you can actually substitute about 30% of corn in feed with cassava, and you will still get the same performance or result from the animals. So there is great potential for its utilization.
Okay, Mr. Douglas, you're a farmer.
Yes, I
Tell
am.
us more about your involvement with Project Grow.
Well, just over a year ago, yes, maybe about a year and a half ago, I was actually seeking opportunities. Uh, I was seeking opportunities primarily in the agriculture sector. And through my research, I was led to an extension officer. As a matter of fact, I was led to persons from Red Stripe who gave me more information, and I suddenly became more intrigued. I wanted more of this. I wanted to be a part of it. Yes, and as such, I enlisted as a farmer in the Project Grow Outgrow program, and to be frank with you, I'm happy that I am.
Why is that so?
Well, you see, farming, there's really a stereotype where farming is concerned, and I think that the Project Grow, what it has done, it has actually pushed aside that stereotype of and put farming or the agricultural sector in the light that it ought to be shown as a lucrative business. Yes, so I've been telling persons no more than ever. I don't see myself as a farmer. I see myself as a businessman. And as Stephanie would have mentioned earlier, with the Project Grow initiative, there are a number of things that would have taken place. There are a lot of training that would have been undertaken to incorporate the farmers. And this training, the training that was given, I can safely say would have greatly enhanced or developed my technical and agronomic capacity. It has, and the training, while not limited to cassava, it includes cassava, but it is definitely not limited to cassava. So I believe that Red Stripe and the D&G Foundation, they're invested in the country and the growth of farmers and the agricultural sector.
Okay, tell us more about the number of acres you have under cultivation and how has business been for you?
Well, I can safely say that it has been, business is better than it was this time last year.
Great.
Yes, I currently have about 7 acres, but having been a part of the project and having seen what the project can do, I am in the market. I'm actually in the process of acquiring additional land. Looking at going up at minimum 20 acres
Okay.
additionally.
Where are you based?
Well, I'm based in Springfield, Morant Bay.
Okay.
Morant Bay, St. Thomas.
Okay. Why would you encourage other persons to join this initiative? That's the Project Grow initiative.
Well, because as was mentioned earlier, the initiative, it provides training. It provides agricultural training, it provides financial training, and this offers an opportunity for persons to experience growth, experience personal growth, and may I say, experience financial growth. So I would encourage persons to look at this project or look at this initiative as an opportunity, as a huge opportunity that is.
Okay. In terms of what you supply to Project Grow, tell us more about that so that persons can understand in terms of numbers, how business has been for you. You said it's been better and you supply the Project Grow initiative. Tell us more about that.
All right. Once you get involved in the production process, Red Stripe is there all in your hand, really. So your extension officers, they actually take you through the entire process. And once you get to the point of harvesting, they're actually there to take all that you have. So there's a ready market for you. So unlike with a lot of other crops where persons are concerned about, all right, after I've cultivated, what am I going to do with it? Red Stripe is saying, listen, we are guaranteeing you a market. And and unlike with other crops, we refer to first and seconds in our agricultural sector. Red Stripe take first, seconds, and third. So they're there. They take everything from us.
Okay. All right. So we're going to Before I go back to Mrs. Coy, I'm going to just head on over to Facebook for a second or more and say hello and thank you to Dante Matthews for tuning in, Rohan Drisdale. And he's saying, yes, Mr. Douglas, just sell farming as a business to young people and St. Thomas as a cassava breeding ground. We also want to say thanks to Paul Lewing for watching. And Mr. Drisdale also is saying Red Stripe seems to have been getting it right as it relates to the component of research and development, and that's the way to go. I hope more food processing entities will spend the money necessary to increase the value added needed and improve the value chain. And Sherry Chaser says, yes, Doug. Do you know who that is?
What was the name?
Sherry D. Chaser.
Sherry D. Chaser.
Yes.
That doesn't sound like the government name, as we call it, but maybe I do.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to just ask Mrs. Stephanie Coy to remind us about the opportunities that exist and what you will be pursuing, that is Red Stripe, terms of 4-H partnerships and so on, so that persons who may not have heard earlier, they be able to hear more about those opportunities.
Okay. Well, we're still seeking to identify additional farmers. The parishes that we have our outgrower farmers, St. Thomas, St. Mary, St. Anne, Trelawney, St. Catherine, Clarendon, Manchester, and St. Elizabeth, because we are targeting farmers and farms that are relatively close in terms of travel time to our processing plant at Red Stripe. And our target is for 3,000 acres, and we are currently at 1,300. We are also seeking to identify additional youths. Our target is 1,000 youths to be trained, and we are currently at 300. And the aim is to train these youths and to provide them with the knowledge for cassava care and what are the techniques, the good agronomic practices for cassava cultivation, that they can either themselves become self-employed and start their own cassava cultivation, or also become farm managers and laborers on our outgrower farms, and in some instances as well as on the Red Stripe farms. And we're also seeking to develop a database for equipment operators, so persons with implements that can be used for land preparation. And we would like to have more persons getting involved in providing harvesters for the farmers that they can utilize during their harvesting time. And also that would mean tractors being available. And we are inviting our financial institutions to come on board, join with us, assist in providing the necessary financing for our farmers, and even for those who may say, well, okay, I don't necessarily want to be a farmer, but I'll be an equipment provider. And what we're seeing also is persons are experimenting. So we have in St. Elizabeth where one person has hired on the young persons that have been trained, and he's now providing a contracting service where once you need persons to go in, and whether it is to spray, to harvest, or to plant, you'll contact him and he will send his team out. So there are a number of opportunities that exist, even for, as Dr. Miles Morgan had spoken, in terms of when we are harvesting, we cut the tops off, which have the leaves. So, in terms of how that is going to be utilized instead of wasted. There is also the waste from the processing of the cassava, which some animal farmers have actually contacted us to see how they can access it, and then they dry it and use it as a feed supplement. So as I said, there are a number of things that we haven't fully used, exposed, explored as yet, So I think there are opportunities for persons to come in, speak to us, and let us see how we can partner and how we can actually build out the value chain. And as I say, make it as sustainable as possible. And as Marvin has said, make it more financially rewarding for everybody along the value chain.
Okay, for persons who are interested in becoming a part of your initiative, tell us how they can get in touch with you or the foundation.
They can contact the foundation at, and I'm going to give them, we have an email address. It's dandgfoundation@heineken.com. And they can also call us at 876-675-5129. And they can also contact the Red Stripe office, and they can email us. My email address is Stephanie, stephannie.hutchinson@heineken.com. So they can get in touch with us. We have an application form that they can complete, and then we will do the site visit to identify if it is a case where they're applying to become a farmer. We'll do the site visit, see if the land is suitable, and advise them.
Okay. Final comments from each of you as you wrap up.
All right, let me take first try. I want to publicly thank the Red Stripe and the DNG Foundation on behalf of all the farmers involved. And I also want to put it out there that St. Thomas is ripe for the picking. Yes, the parish offers a whole lot. I guess the time is right now for you to look to St. Thomas for more farmers. Not that the youths in other parishes aren't in need of all of this, but we most certainly are. And for the persons like Dr. Miles Morgan and all the persons involved in the research and the development, we want to thank them. And young people, this is an opportunity. This is not a chance that you want to pass you by. Yes? The contact numbers were given, the email address was given. Reach out to Red Stripe, reach out to the DNG Foundation. There's a slice of pie for pretty much all of us.
Okay. Dr. Morgan, any final comments?
Yes, I would like to say that it has been a long time that we have been speaking about cassava, and we have faced several challenges in terms of establishing a value chain for this particular commodity. And the ministry is pleased to see how Red Stripe has developed a formula that is working so far in incorporating all the various actors within the value chain, and of course the role of research and development, because things don't remain static. We always have to be at a place where we're always creating and innovating, and for our farmers as well, we can see the interest, and we just wish them well, and we pray that as we go forward that we will see this being replicated in other spheres within the country. So we're most grateful for being a part of this initiative.
And for us, Red Stripe is committed to seeing this being successful. We are truly happy and thankful to our partners for working with us. We are happy that a number of persons have contacted us and say, we would like to assist. What can we do? We're really grateful to the farmers who have really come on board, who are working with us, who are doing their own experimentations to see, what will make it better for them. And we are truly, truly happy and grateful that it has taken on, and it is doing so well. And it is not something that we are keeping to ourselves. And so we'd like to share and have other opportunities where we can share what it is that we have done and learn also from other persons who have done other value chains. And so, as I said, on behalf of Red Stripe and Denoy and Geddes Foundation, thanks to all the partners, thanks to all the youths that have actually come out to the training sessions. It is so amazing to see them give up their time for 5 days of training, and they make it there. Some of them actually have to walk to the location, but they are committed. And so the level of commitment that we have seen to the development of this value chain across the board, across agencies, government, non-government, international donor agencies, and from the communities, it's tremendous. And I say it will only augur well for Jamaica and the development of this value chain.
Okay, Mrs. Coy, can you just repeat the email addresses that you mentioned earlier for persons to be able to reach out to?
They can contact us at dandgfoundation@heineken.com, or they can call us at 876-675-5129.
Okay, and they can visit the location as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're at 214 Spanish Town Road.
Okay, thank you for that. And we also want to, at this point in time, say hello to Romeo Winter, who is saying that this initiative is a very good one. And he's also saying big up Marvin and Mr. Drisdale. Mr. Drisdale, we want to thank you very much for being so active with us today. He says he can't wait to start his 20 acres. And Hilbert Glenn is watching. Thank you so much for tuning in. And at this point, we're going to just say thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to our guests who took the time out to join us today to tell us more about the cassava opportunities in terms of cultivating and processing. Dr. Lisa Myers-Morgan from the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, Marvin Douglas, Project Grow Farmer, and Mrs. Stephanie Coy, who is the project manager from the Deno and Geddes Foundation. And we just want to remind you that you, the audience, you play a very important role in our show. So if there's anyone that you're interested in having or seeing in studio, let us know, and we will try our best to have that person or persons in studio as soon as possible. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Jamaica Information Service to see who will be in studio next. So we do this every Thursday live on Facebook. I'm your host, Joey James Sawyers, for today. This has been Studio 58A Live. Thank you again for joining us, and do enjoy the rest of your day.